This crowd rises to its feet. Carl slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland one of the lane, locked to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. We finally have some clarity about who the Cavs' first round opponent is going to be. We've at least eliminated two, really, from the mix. The Chicago Bulls lost to the Miami Heat just before we started recording this. Orlando Magic beat the Atlanta Hawks yesterday, so we know the Cavs will be playing one of the Atlanta Hawks or the Miami Heat. Joining me today to attempt to break down this first round is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
Attempt? It sounds like you're not sure we're going to be able to do it.
It's honestly the weirdest preview that we've done because going into the play-in, we knew exactly who we were playing. Going into the Knicks series, we knew who that they were going to play. We had a full week, to break that down. We were able to do the same thing for the Orlando Magic. This is really the first time that, we're going into a series and, we're going to find out 2 days before. We're going to find out 2 days before Sunday who the Cavs are playing, and I'm interested to see what that dynamic is really like.
I think you could be guilty of accusing Adam Silver of too often listening to podcasters and worrying about what podcasters want. Talk about an inverted situation, the monkey paw curling.
you might be right.
Playing's
there. You
good
might
for
be right.
everyone but podcasters, baby.
Well, here's the funny thing, because Richard Jefferson brought this up on the broadcast tonight about how the Miami Heat, if they do make it through and if they are able to beat the Atlanta Hawks on Friday, they're basically going to be on the road 8 days coming into game one of the playoffs. That is quite the disadvantage. And obviously, if you're going to be the 10 seed in the play-in and earn your way to the playoffs, you should have to climb an uphill. That should be an uphill battle. I'm not feeling any sympathy for them. But when you talk about the Cavs' inability to really prepare specifically for one team, I'm sure now they're going to be in the process of game planning for both the Hawks and the Heat. I still think that the lower seed is definitely at a disadvantage here.
Yeah, no kidding. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I am not, you never know exactly how you feel about this stuff till the dust settles. Sometimes it's like when your partner and you are talking about restaurants and you've listed two that you'd be okay with, and then they pick one and you go, that's not the one I wanted. And you didn't really realize it wasn't the one you wanted till someone picked the other one. I kind of feel that way about the Orlando Magic. The second they stopped being available, I was like, I'm kind of glad I don't have to deal with that.
Okay, so it's basically an inverse.
Inverse.
That's an inverse scenario. I recognize that on the front end, as much as I want to, show, hey, this is a different situation than it was last year. Let's be honest, no Jalen Suggs, that changes the complexion of the series. I already know that this is a better Cavs team than it was last year, and no Mo Wagner. Like, what's the point of beating the Orlando Magic in 5 games if you can't rub it in Mo's face? Like, it's not the same when he's on the bench. So I'm more than happy to see the Boston Celtics go up against the Orlando Magic, and even if that series goes 4 or 5 games, physically it's probably going to feel like a 6-game series, because that is just what it's like to play Orlando.
Yeah, one can hope that the battle of attrition that is the playoffs takes its toll on the Celtics. Obviously, don't want to root for anyone to get hurt, but it's hard work playing those Magic. It sucks. Yep. They hack more than any other team in the league. It's a key part of their identity, and for a team that has struggled with the injury bug, like, it's kind of nice to avoid that. Now, Atlanta is a pretty physical team too.
Mm-hmm.
They'll beat you up a little bit. Daniels will get into the passing lanes. But I do think there's still a pretty big difference between that and Orlando. At the end of the day, and there's also just more spots on the Atlanta team to attack, so overall, definitely happy to see Orlando. I was pretty indifferent. I didn't think Chicago was getting out of this thing.
I actually did. I thought Chicago had a real chance because when you're looking at the post All-Star break stretch,
almost like March doesn't matter, Justin.
They were 17-10. They, post All-Star break, number 10 offense, number 14 defense. They were trending in the right direction here. And, some of it I think is, hey, the Miami Heat, they are tough to kill. No matter who is available for them, they always seem to get one game off of a team in a playoff series. They always seem to find a way to squeeze a little bit more life out of that towel and find a way to extend their season. So I'm not surprised to see them win, but part of me wondered, hey, there's no Jimmy Butler this time around. They've kind of had a tiring season. Are they ready to just kind of check out as the 10 seed going into the play-in? And the answer that we got tonight is absolutely not. I'm actually curious to ask you about this because we've talked about the play in the last couple of years, and I think we both have generally been fans of it. Has your opinion evolved at all now that we have more of a sample size? Like, I think coming in, both of us liked it, and then the Cavs got eliminated in the play-in. And even despite that, I was still sitting here saying, I think this is a net good for the league. Do you still feel that way?
I do. I think this year wasn't maybe the most sterling example for it, just because there was such a difference between 7 through 10 and 11 through 15 in each conference.
Yeah.
Where there wasn't, you didn't see Toronto desperately trying to get into the play-in, because that's one of the things I've liked about it, is that the lower middle class of the league is less likely to tank if they have a couple postseason games of revenue that they might be able to chase. So you didn't have that, but what you did have out west is this vicious race from the 3rd seed to the 8th seed, trying to desperately avoid it. And the other, so if I thought that it did more, I thought it did more to help with tanking than lottery reform. And I also think what it did was it made it so there's 6 playoff spots, not 10. Everyone's complaining that there's no 10. I'm saying there's only 6. We have a 6 and a wild card, and I think that tension was really, really good out west. So even in a year where I don't think it was perfect for like selling the play-in, I still think it's a net good.
It's funny because I think this being such a great draft class probably shifted incentives for some of those lower teams. And I also think in the Eastern Conference, if Orlando was healthier for the majority of the season, all of a sudden you have a 7th team and you're going to have a little bit of a race to avoid the play-in, right? Like Detroit with their 44-38 record, that's the exact same record that the Cavs had when they were the 8th seed and lost in the play-in, right? Like normally that gets pushed down a little bit further. If Philadelphia was healthier, you would have, another team in that mix. And honestly, as much as I hate to ever credit the Toronto Raptors, if that team was healthy and had their full roster available to them, Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes.
You're missing the elephant in the room, Philly.
No, I already said Philly.
Oh, you said Philly. Okay, sorry.
I led with them, good sir. Oh, actually, I led with Orlando.
I heard Orlando and Toronto. I didn't hear anything about Philly.
Nah, I'm pretty sure I had them in there. If not, that's on me. So thank
hold
you
this man accountable. Don't hold me accountable if I'm wrong, though.
Nah, it's okay. But, having those extra teams in the mix would have caused more of that race for 6. And really the way that I look at it is it's more of a punishment for 7 and 8 than it is a reward for 9 and 10. Like, you're really setting up that, your season can fall apart in 2 games. So you better try like hell to avoid this thing. And, it does give, let's say, Embiid didn't have to be shut down for the year. And they could kind of stick around in that 9-10 spot. allows a good team that just had bad injury luck to have a chance to come in. Obviously, that sucks for whoever's sitting there in the 1 seed, but it's not like we haven't seen those scenarios before. So I feel like it's a net positive, and in general, I enjoy the games, and I feel like there has been some really good play-in games over the last couple of years, and there's also been some really good game 82s. As bad as some of the March and April basketball can be, when it's teams in that race, particularly when they're playing against one another, you can get some really, really good basketball.
Yeah, and even like when it's not both teams that are participating, but Harrison Barnes hits a game winner against Golden State, pushes them into the play-in. Now they have to fight for their lives. Now they get a very green young Rockets team to go up against, and it's going to be the old age versus beauty type of matchup. And like now you get something really interesting based off a game that in the old days just would be whatever. Like I do think there is a lot of net benefit, and I think almost you're really not even seeing the discourse about the play-in anymore. I feel like it was just a pretty universally successful initiative.
No, I've seen like the odd bad faith kind of argument, but in general, I feel like this is something that as we get more years of experience with it, right, as it becomes more and more normalized, people, once something no longer feels new, they stop feeling the need to pick it apart, and it just gets accepted as part of the game. And I like that it's around. Who do you think, but before we dive into kind of the strengths of both Atlanta as well as Miami and how they match up against the Cavs, how do you think that game's going to play out on Friday?
I'm just gonna pick Miami. I think they're a healthier team. I think they're a more they've got more guys with playoff scars. You look at Atlanta, if you look at their normal roster, you definitely pick them, but Mo Gay is playing for them. Dominic Barlow is playing for them. In like real minutes. These are the guys you kind of expect to be playing in March and April as the team is a little banged up, but then then they clear out of the way for the tight rotation. And Quinn Snyder played 10 guys against Orlando. And I just don't think they've got the depth. And I think Miami has a lot of guys to throw at Trey to make his life hard. Davion Mitchell is just the perfect Heat culture player.
Yeah.
Hero went absolutely ballistic tonight. And the other really good players in the Hawks, I just kind of feel like the Heat kind of have good answers for, like me and you love Okongwu, but is he not, great value brand Bam Adebayo?
Yeah,
like he's not going to get to do Okongwu-y stuff against Bam.
Yeah, I feel like of the players that are available, obviously I think this is a different conversation if Jalen Johnson was available for Atlanta. I think there was an argument that he was their most impactful player when he was healthy, but you have to give the coaching edge to Spoelstra, because I just think that he is, if not the best coach in the league, he's top 3, right? Like I think just from track record and what he's been able to do with that team, I think he's as good as it gets. Bam Adebayo, I think is one of the best defensive players in the league. He's a top 5 defensive player. Tyler Hero was an all-star this year. He's been terrific. Andrew Wiggins gave them really, really good minutes against Chicago, and he's capable of playing well. So I definitely am leaning Miami, which is funny because I really felt like Chicago had a chance to come out of this thing. But, maybe this is just the rock, paper, scissors of the NBA, and I'm just learning. Oh, Miami is still rock. They're going to make it through it. They beat Chicago, so therefore they get to keep the belt and they get to advance.
Yeah, I think it also, like, you have a little bit of positive momentum on your side. I mean, I'll be interested once.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah.
Once the play-in, gets 15, 20 years of data under its belt, I will be curious to see how often the 9-10 winner kind of can sneak in. Just knowing they're coming off a win, the other team's coming off a loss, and there is I remember feeling it in the 7-8 game 3 years ago, like, oh no, we lost. Now what's gonna happen? Like, there's just this different kind of angst that creeps in, at least as a fan. So I'm gonna pick Miami to win. I think that's if I'm the Cavs video staff, maybe I'm putting my best guys on Miami, and a
60-40 split,
a 60-40 attention split perhaps. But of course, that's not why I don't run a film room, because that's probably not how that works at all.
Yeah, basketball's a game of runs. When you're coming off a win, that gives you that extra little boost. But if you're a podcaster or someone that's, using Zoom for your workplace, Zoom AI Companion can give you that same boost, Carter, because only you can do your best work. Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworker. Available at no additional cost with eligible paid plans. Work happy with Zoom AI Companion. Let's take a look at these teams, Carter. The thing that jumps out to me right away when I'm kind of looking at the season-long stats, and this is very often the case when you are talking about what is functionally, the 8 seed and the 10 seed right now competing for the 8th spot in the history books. These are not perfect teams. These are not teams that have a glaring strength. I would say Atlanta is 17th in offense and 18th in defense, below average in both, or about average in both. Miami is the number 21 offense, number 9 defense. So, there's a top 10 trait. You at least expect an Eric Spoelstra team to play very well defensively, and I think we've seen that in some of those matchups. But what's going to be interesting to me is that the Cavs, on the other hand, have been really, really good across the board. And when you look at some of the areas where maybe there's been some slippage, like their number 22 defensive rebound rate, neither of these teams really seem poised to take advantage of that. Atlanta is 13th in offensive rebound rate, and Miami is 27th. So if your prediction and my prediction is true, the Miami Heat advance through this, that is not a team that is likely to beat them up on the offensive glass.
No, and I mean, just up and down. These are the definition of meh teams. You look at the standings and you see Miami with a plus 0.6 point differential on the year, and Atlanta with a minus 1.1. I think it's important to say, I mean, anyone who's listening to this podcast already knows this, but the Cavs should win their series in 4 or 5 games.
Yeah.
It would be very surprising, just based on the profiles of the two teams, if it went any other way.
Yep.
Teams that outscore their opponent by 10 points a game rarely lose series to teams that almost get outscored on the season or finish their season 8 games under 500. So, important to say that. I will say, this is where on the Atlanta side, I guess I'd like to start on the Atlanta side. Yeah. Not having Clint Capella available is hard for them. They just don't have a lot of size that's impactful. Okongwu is a very good offensive rebounder. Moget is okay at it, but that's kind of it, and they don't have a lot of just beefy big men. Dominic Barlow, I think, is a little bit, of a tweener forward. Mm-hmm. He's not someone who's going to beat you up. And then guys who down their roster, Daniels is a pretty good rebounder because he's a big guard. Risa Shea is not as good as his size would indicate. Trae Young is obviously famously horrific. And then you look at the bench, it's Niang, LeVert, who never were great rebounders for the Cavs and still aren't for Atlanta. And then a guy like Terrence Mann, who once was a very hot prospect for the Clippers, he only played 10 minutes in that game against Orlando. Mm-hmm. And he was a good glass crasher in for the Clippers, but he's just not important enough for them. So I just think they're not really that well built to beat us up physically, either on the glass or just in general.
No, they really aren't. And when I'm looking at these matchups, I don't think that these teams should have a chance in the series, but you never know if there's one aspect that at least the Cavs can say, hey, this is a strength of theirs. Let's work to take that away. And when it comes to the Atlanta Hawks, they like to get out in transition. They're number one in transition frequency. And for the Cavs, transition defense, it isn't poor, but it's not their biggest strength. They're 11th in transition defense. And I'd be really interested to see if you do ultimately end up playing the Atlanta Hawks and they are getting out and running. Maybe that is an opportunity for the Cavs to work on their transition defense. Because if you end up playing the Indiana Pacers in the second round, that's a team that's going to get out and run. Boston may try to get out and run. And even though they're not the highest frequency transition team, how you defend those transition attempts versus Boston, whether you are finding, the shooters in the corner, whether you're finding those guys streaking up and down the court, how you defend those possessions might be the difference in a series that we believe is going to have very thin margins. So I still think that there are things that you can take from these individual matchups, even though you are at an advantage and you should be the overwhelming favorite to win that series. Because, as I said, the Cavs are 11th in transition defense. They're 5th in half-court defense. So typically when you have that as an indicator, that says your defense is going to be better in the postseason.
Yeah.
But I still think that, when I look at Atlanta, that's the number one thing that I'm looking at. They are a slightly above average offensive rebounding team. It's hard to use season averages when they are missing guys and they are banged up. But the one thing that we know they're going to do is they're going to get out and run. And because they know that they're at a talent deficit and they know that they're the 8 seed versus the 1 seed, I would expect them to get up threes at a higher rate, because really 3-point attempts and 3-point variance, that's probably your best chance at a great equalizer. That game that they won in Cleveland, not the weird Thanksgiving afternoon game, but the game they won in Cleveland, they got fewer than their normal average in terms of wide open 3-point looks. They just made them at a really, really high clip in a game where the Cavs generated, I think it was 32 wide open 3-point attempts and just didn't make any of them. Your best chance at getting a game off the Cavs is by banking on that kind of variance. So I'd expect them to try to get easy baskets in transition and try to get those 3-pointers up at a high rate.
Yeah, and I think the other thing they're going to try to do is just try to get the Cavs in rotation. I'll be really interested to see what the Cavs decide to do defensively in that series if it comes to pass. One thing that we really criticized JB and the game plan for in that play in game 3 years ago was that, they kind of left what they were doing, and then we're very rigid. They said, we're going to switch everything. First half, it was going quite well. Second half, Trae Young figured out that, I can score on Lauri Markkanen. And it was just a parade of, beating Markkanen off the dribble, help having to come against set shooters and just feeding the corners, feeding lob threats, feeding, Trae is at his best one of the great offensive engines in the league.
Right.
When the jumper is going for him, I mean, he is a passing savant. He led the league in assists this year. And I'll be really interested to see how different the Cavs want to get with their defensive fundamentals and how they want to chase him. Are they just going to switch everything? That's certainly a strategy. Are they going to show him size and put two on the ball and make him outlet and trust their rotations on the back end? Probably don't want to play a ton of drop on Trae. That's kind of one of the things he likes to beat up. But how are you going to both corral him and keep the corral his passing and not just let him go ballistic on an army of floaters? This very well could be a series where Trae scores 40 plus in 2 or 3 games. That's kind of, in my opinion, kind of their only road to stealing 2 or 3 games in this series.
Yeah. There's something I want to say, and I don't want it to be as disrespectful as it's going to sound, but I'm going to say it anyways, and it's just going to sound that way. But in a lot of ways, he's scout team Tyrese Halliburton. You get to practice what you're going to have to do against Tyrese Halliburton, right, versus Trae Young. Just like, Ben Simmons was the stand-in for Jokic for the Clippers. That's obviously Trae Young is much closer to Tyrese Halliburton, but how you have to defend him is going to be very similar. Obviously, there's no way to guarantee that the Indiana Pacers are going to make it to the next round, but these are the type of things that you kind of have to look into, right? Like, you want to challenge yourself. You want to gain experience of making the adjustments, trying to take away the strengths. Even if you don't need to make adjustments to win the series, you still want to get that practice. So you want to, get that muscle memory of the execution. And I think that's really what I'm trying to take away from this first round here. That's what I really, really want to learn, because the last 2 years, first round series has been a dogfight. One of them they lost, one of them they won. But it never really felt like they were fully in control of the series. And now the Cavs have the talent, they have the health, they have everything that they need to, impose their will on a series. It's about, are they able to do that effectively? Are they able to be as dominant as they were in the regular season? And, coming into game 1 and 2, yeah, you don't know who your opponent is until 2 days before. But really, like, games 1 and 2, you're kind of coming out with your base plan to some extent. Like, you are going to tweak your game plan to what you think is going to work well against the other team. But typically game 3 is where you really see adjustments in a series. I'm sure the Cavs have a game plan in mind for the Atlanta Hawks and for the Miami Heat. They're going to highlight things in the film session, but you're not really going to deviate from that game 1 game plan for the first 2 games, because you're trying to get an appropriate sample size as well of, hey, like, this, we think this work is going to work, even if it didn't work particularly well in game 1. And that little chess match is what I'm looking for here.
Yeah, I think really, like, what you're talking about isn't necessarily about playing perfectly. It's about, imposing your style.
Yes.
And, like, I think as impressive as I thought that Magic series was for the Cavs, I'm not sure I would say they imposed their style. I think they played an Orlando game and just beat Orlando at Orlando's game. Yeah. I would actually argue they played more close to Cavaliers basketball against the Celtics than
100%
than Orlando.
100%.
And
the Orlando series was trusting the defense. They got in a rock fight, and Donovan Mitchell happened to be better than Paolo Banchero. That's really what it came down to. Like, kind of that lead initiator was the lead initiator, and Mitchell did a better job of it.
Yeah, I think, like, what you want at some point is Atlanta to be kind of looking around at each other in the huddle going, what, we need to change everything. Like, that's what you want them to have to be saying. Because, like, we're not in control of this series in any meaningful way. And, like, that's what I think you really want to see. But with that said, I do want to ask a couple of rotation questions before we pivot over to Miami. Is this an Isaac Okoro series?
Yes, you're playing Trae Young. I would like to see, honestly, I would like to have Okoro in the early rotation of all of these kind of matchups, no matter who we're playing, even if it doesn't feel like as much of an Isaac Okoro series on paper, at least from the defensive standpoint, because I want to get him those reps offensively, and I want to see if we can, with the new ways that we're using him, if he can be an effective part of the rotation, kind of regardless of matchup. We're still talking about someone that's, 23 years old here. Like, getting good data on Isaac Okoro is a really important thing for me. So obviously against Trae Young, I think he does as good of a job as anybody in the league. So it's definitely a yes for me. But I just wanted to have that qualifier of, even if it's a series where it isn't as important, even if you're playing a Milwaukee Bucks where there isn't a huge strategic advantage of putting him on a dynamic guard, I would still like to see Isaac Okoro out there in the early series rotation.
Yeah, I would too. I asked the question because I do think it is. What's going to be important, though, for him is making Atlanta pay when they have Trae stashed on him.
Yes.
He needs to bully him. He needs to use his physicality. He needs to be a great screener for the guards to get Dyson Daniels, who is their one of the best point of attack guard defenders in the NBA. get him out of the paint, get him away from Darius and Donovan when they have the ball. Because I do imagine a lot of Okoro's minutes will come at the 2 in this series if he's going to be a major part of your rotation. So you're not going to have 2 of Darius, Donovan, Ty in some of those lineups. Some of them you will, but just in terms of because Atlanta has pretty good positional size, it gets really messy to be like, all right, Ty Jerome, you got Risache, who's 6'10", playing small forward. Like you're gonna have to make some interesting lineup decisions with who's guarding who in the minutes where Okoro's at the 3 if you want him going and chasing around the only small player on the floor for Atlanta.
I agree with you. I'm very curious if we're going to be right, though. Like, I'm very curious to see if we change up the rotation or if we end up seeing, the constant 2 guard, no matter what, and even some 3 guard lineups with Sam Merrill. I'm really, really, really curious to see if that ultimately is the case, because what you're saying makes absolute sense. I think this is a series for the Cavs to use their wings because you have wings available. You have the option to play larger. We'll see if that ends up coming to fruition. That's one of those things we may learn about how Kenny Atkinson chooses to approach the playoffs that you're just not going to learn until you're in the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. And then I'll let you also do closing thoughts and a final pick if it's Atlanta. But I just think at the end of the day, they just don't have enough answers for what the Cavs have from a roster perspective. We were talking on the Discord today, and I think you mentioned George Niang is going to have to put in shifts on Evan Mobley. Like
you stole my series preview.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And I just or it's going to be Mo Gay and Dom Barlow, and it's like what I suspect will happen in this series, if it goes the way we hope it goes, is one of the Hawks role players is going to be getting cooked, whether it's Niang, whether it's Barlow, whoever it is, and someone's going to say, we got to get him off the floor. And smart fans of the Hawks will say, for who? I just think their toolkit isn't quite big enough. I mean, you can downshift a little. You can do Vit Krejci and Terrence Mann and play uber small ball, but I don't think they've got enough guys that, you really, really can trust.
Yeah. Like you might switch, like we talk about Isaac Okoro moving down the, assignments, playing small forward, but guarding Trae Young and some of the cross matching you're doing there. You might have the same thing on the Hawks side, just in reverse, where Risache is playing shooting guard, but he's guarding Evan Mobley as the 4, and George Niang is like sliding down to guard Isaac Okoro or something on those lines, right? Because that's not going to be a beneficial matchup. I think that would look a lot like when he was trying to guard Paolo in last year's Magic series, which, when you look at how good Evan Mobley has gone in space, and also just how good Evan Mobley is at finishing over guys. Like, that's the biggest thing.
And they won't give you the bailout stuff Paolo gives you.
Right. And like Okongwu is 6'8", 6'9". George Niang's 6'7". Mo Gay's got some good length.
He's 6'10", but not a big dude.
Mobley just finishes over guys. And I think we are going to... We've talked about it for years, that Evan Mobley is going to be the one that dictates how far the Cavs go and all that. But I think we're really going to get a feel for how much better Evan Mobley is and how his game is going to translate to the playoffs in game 1 of round 1.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Both of these matchups should be series where Evan Mobley plays a very significant role. And I think getting him going should be goal number 1 in the playoffs. We need to have Evan Mobley playing really well, playing confident, and being a two-way monster out there. I think that is the Cavs' best pathway to success. And if we can build positive momentum in that direction, why not start in round 1?
Fair. What's your pick for a Atlanta Hawks Cleveland Cavaliers series?
Cavs in 4.
I'm going Cavs in 5. I think Trae is capable of stealing a game against anyone. I think they have enough shooting variance. They have shooting talent on that roster.
Yes.
And
Harris can go for 41. We know that.
yeah, so like I just think they have enough volatility offensively that I think they finished 18th on offense, but I think there are nights where they look like the 5th best offense in the league.
Yep.
And there's just other nights where they look like the 25th, and that's how you get to 18th. But I think they're just a more volatile team than their averages kind of make them look. So
yeah.
I'm going Cavs in 5. Want to talk Miami? You want to go
Hell
first?
Yeah. Here's the thing. Miami, I think I really want them because I want the Cavs to experience some form of a test in the playoffs. And I think going up against Eric Spoelstra is going to force them to make the types of adjustments that I was saying, hey, that's what you want experience with. That's what you want to kind of try out in the playoffs here. I think Spo is going to throw different things at them. I think they're going to be forced to do problem solving. And if my primary motivation, if my number one area of interest heading into the first round is, can Evan Mobley get it going? Can Evan Mobley show that this is different, that he is ready to do what's necessary to get this team a championship this season? Going up against Bam Adebayo is the perfect matchup to make that kind of a statement. Because Bam is phenomenal. He's someone that we have compared Mobley to, basically since he entered the league, that we wanted to see him basically be a bigger Bam Adebayo. That matchup would be fascinating. The coaching matchup would be fascinating. And I think Miami has the ability to really test the Cavs, not in terms of pushing the series, but I think they'd have to play at a higher level than they would against Atlanta in order to win the series in 4 or 5 games.
See, it's a weird thing where I don't disagree with anything you just said, but I do have this weird headspace where I feel like the Hawks will test the Cavs stylistically more.
Okay.
Because of the singularity of Trey.
Mm-hmm.
The style and the way he bends and breaks your brain a little bit when he's really on. Whereas I feel like the Cavs won't have to make one change to the way they've played all year to beat Miami. They just will have to execute very, very well.
Let me ask you this. I agree that how you have to account for Trae Young, that's a different beast than what Tyler Hero is going to do. Like I trust Donovan Mitchell to guard Tyler Hero. I trust guys up and down the roster to guard Tyler Hero. Are you trying to learn about the defense or are you trying to learn about the offense? Because I want to learn about the offense, and I think Miami is going to test the Cavs offense as much, if not more, than Atlanta would test the Cavs defense. And I don't worry about the Cavs defense. I understand that theoretically that might come up at some point in the playoffs, but it has not at any point to this point. And because I want to learn about the offense translating in the playoffs, I think Miami is the more interesting test for that reason.
Yeah, I'm not even saying Atlanta's more interesting. It's just I just think it's a style thing in terms of how the Cavs might tweak what they're doing, and part of it's just because Atlanta's got more weak points that you're more willing to go out of your way to attack. If that makes sense. Like you might
that's
just
fair.
So you might just do things differently on both ends of the ball than what you've done all year. Like I don't expect.
You want to see if we're going to matchup hunt, like if we're just going to get
maybe
really mean.
I don't
times?
even know if I want to see. I just kind of think they might. I think they might just behave a little differently. Whereas Miami is just like they play one drop big, they play one Bam Adebayo, they play a big small forward, they play a shooting guard, they play Burks a little bit and Davion for ball pressure. And like
Andrew Wiggins' revenge series.
Maybe. I don't know. He's always been good against us. I think I just think like I don't I asked about Isaac Okoro and if they should kind of tweak the rotation to give him more run. And I do agree that you're right. They probably won't, if they do tweak, it won't be till mid-series, even against Atlanta. But like I don't think they could or should tweak their rotation really against Miami. I think they should play 100% how they've played all year. because I think defensively they should be able to do a really, really good job on this Miami team. Offensively, Miami gives up more, is in the bottom third of the league in 3-pointers allowed. So they should be able to get, because they're a team that you can get into rotation, and the Cavs are really, really
and
good
they
at
play
doing
a lot
that.
of zone.
Play a lot of zone, exactly.
Yeah.
So like all the things that make the Cavs, that has made the Cavs offense prolific this year, Miami is not that well built to stop. I think if anything, I'm not sure I would say that Miami inherently is a much greater test than Atlanta defensively, though I do think they are, just literally because of the Bam factor. But I would actually say they're a much greater test for Evan Mobley. We'll learn more about Evan Mobley. Actually, I don't know if more, but if he goes off against Miami, then we'll really know we have a stew going. Whereas if he goes off against Atlanta, we'll be really encouraged, and that will be new in terms of like dominating a series start to finish. But like it'll be different if it's Bam.
Yeah, that's part of why I want to see it. I believe that Evan Mobley is a guy that can clear high bars, so why not set them up high? I don't need them. I don't need the high jump to be at 3 feet to start things off, which is what going up against George Niang would be in comparison to Bam Adebayo. Let's set it high and see what he can do there. Let's see if he can do a backflip over that high jump bar. I'm here for Evan Mobley being tested because I think he's going to pass those tests. Looking at how Miami's performed defensively, they are the number 9 defense in the NBA this season and the number 9 half-court defense. So that's certainly interesting. They're 26 in transition frequency, so that one area where the Cavs are less than great in terms of their transition defense, Miami isn't going to test them in that area. They are not a particularly good transition defense. Miami is 21st in transition defense, while the Cavs, despite not being a high transition frequency team, they are number 3 in transition efficiency. So I would expect the Cavs to be able to get some easy buckets there, although we do know that postseason basketball tends to kind of shift towards the half court more so than getting out and running.
Yeah, but we do need to see them get the buckets that are there, you know. If we want to see this offense hold up the way that we're all kind of desperately hoping and praying it does, means you got to get the easy ones when they're available to you. So I do think that's interesting. I think Miami's positional size is pretty strong. You know, you've got Hero at 6'4", Burks at 6'5", Wiggins at 6'7", 6'8", Bam at 6'9". Ware is a true 7'1", though, you know, he's a rookie. If that'll be a good bellwether for the Cavs offense, is how quickly they can make Spo go. Kyle Anderson, Haywood Highsmith, please come save the defense. We can't have this child out here. Like, that's, you know, like that'll be a good bellwether for how well the Cavs offense is functioning. Like, Ware played 20 minutes in this. He starts, but he doesn't play like 30, 40 minutes a game for them. You know, chasing him from the floor is a good bellwether for how well the offense is running. But they do have good positional size, you know, and even when they downshift, and, you know, Kyle Anderson, who, you know, isn't a brutish power forward, but has really good length, and, you know, is a guy who just always makes really smart plays. You know, he can very credibly guard Evan Mobley in the post. You know, that's not a problem. Haywood Highsmith can guard up really, really well. So I think you know, I think that bench, the two benches against each other, will be a really interesting battle. Like, when you look at Miami, you're almost more impressed by the guys coming off the bench than the guys who start. You know, Davion Mitchell has, you know, fit like a glove there. The intense ball pressure, which we know Cavs don't like, is something that flips games for them. Kyle Anderson is just such a freaking grown up out there. He can play 23 minutes and not attempt a shot and be plus 15 like he was tonight. Right. Haywood Highsmith can, you know, when that 3-pointer is going, especially, you know, all that athleticism, all those smarts really play. And then Duncan Robinson is kind of this chaos agent who swings bench minutes when with his movement. You know, I mean, he's basically Sam Merrill if Sam Merrill was 6'8".
Yeah.
And that's very a good thing to be. So I think if the Cavs bench, draws dead with Miami's bench, if Ty, Sam, Okoro, Hunter, Wade are like even with Miami's bench, I think we're winning this very, very comfortably. If Miami's bench is changing the shape of the game and consistently messing up the vibes, then I think the Cavs might have a bit more of a fight on their hands.
Yeah, I agree with that. Where would you go on a series with Miami? What are you picking here?
I'm also gonna go Cavs in 5 here.
Okay.
Just I think the style. I think this is a better matchup for the Cavs. Um, uh, but like
Miami always gets one.
Miami's always gonna get one. I think they have the best coach in the league. I think if either series was more likely to go long, I would pick this one for that reason. Spo is a demon. But I think I would rather play Miami. I think I'm there. I'd rather see the test. I'd rather get really good data. I'd really like to see how they handle a super well coached together team, even if the talent level isn't, even what Orlando was last year.
And let's be honest, we're selfish. I think from, breaking down the series, breaking down game by game, I think it's more interesting to talk about what a Miami series would be. I just think that the test there and just what Spo is able to do, and even just the top end talent of Miami, like he could probably make an argument Tyler Hero versus Trae Young this year in terms of like overall impact and stuff like that. I probably would lean Trae, but it's close enough that you could make that argument. I still think Bam is the best player out of all that bunch. I'll be honest, my brain is telling me, Cavs in 5 when it comes to Miami, but I really do have a gut feeling that the Cavs are going to sweep this first round series. I think they have been less interested in the regular season, having locked up things for a while now. And I feel like this is a team that has championship goals, that is hungry to make a statement. And I think what they are going to do, the experience of recognizing what a long series can do to you, right? Like they dominated Orlando in games 1 and 2, and then that series went on for too long. That had an impact on how the series went against Boston. I think you learn from that experience.
Yeah.
And, you talk about the bench and can our bench play their bench to draw? Honestly, man, like we got 2 out of the top 3 6-man of the year candidates in Ty Jerome and DeAndre Hunter. Our starting lineup should be the better starting lineup. Our bench should be the better bench. Spo, I agree, best coach in the league. Kenny Atkinson was the best coach this year. I think Cavs can sweep Miami. I think that would be a hell of a statement to make, and that is my official prediction here.
I went on Locked On Cavs on Monday with Danny Cunningham, and I asked him a question that I'm going to ask you now, which is there any performance that the Cavs can have in the first round that would change how you feel going into a Boston series in the conference finals?
No. I think Mobley having a great series is going to help solidify how I feel. But we talked about this on the last podcast. I am starting my expectations at a high level, and I'm just going to maintain those. I'm not going to, start leaping up proportionally if the Cavs do have a great series. I have a very, very high level of confidence that this Cavs team can play the way that we've seen them play when they're playing at their best. So I'm just going to maintain that, throughout playoffs. My confidence can shrink. I don't think it can go up because I respect the challenge that Boston is. I think that's going to be a rock fight of that series. And, that kind of swaying variance of me believing it's, a 40-60 chance to a true 50-50 chance or if both teams are fully healthy, that's probably kind of like my margin for error there. But in general, I'm going to kind of maintain, the same. I don't think I can push up my level of confidence from where it's already at.
Intellectually, I completely agree with you, and you are right. Emotionally, I think they still can answer some vibe check questions for me. If they get through a first round series with a 118 offensive rating and they're putting up 120, 125, 130 in some of these games, then I'm going to be like, oh, like, it'll really, like, it will be kind of one, it can be one of the last pieces on my confidence journey with this team, like, because I just haven't seen it yet. So, like, even though intellectually I see all the indicators that tell me that this offense should be great in the postseason, I still haven't seen it. So once I do think it's going to unlock a little piece for me emotionally, and my emotions and my intellect will ideally be aligned.
If we get to the Eastern Conference Finals in 10 games and we have a 120 offensive rating in the playoffs, like, I'm going to be sending you those little messages on the side being like, dog, we can do this. We can do this.
That was the root of my question is, am I going to be getting those messages?
You're probably going to be getting those messages. Let's be real. It's me. I'm excitable, and that's what this time of year is all about. It's about belief. It's about having fun. It's about enjoying this, because we are going to be entering some high stress scenarios here. The playoffs are always stressful. Every game matters so much. Every possession matters so much. And this is a high pressure environment for our guys too. Like, when you are this good, it comes with expectations. It comes with pressure. Can Darius Garland have a great playoff series? Can he have a great playoff run? We haven't really seen that from him. Evan Mobley, same question. He's probably going to be an all-NBA player, which means you're in that top 15 range. When you are newly anointed as a top 15 player in the NBA, that's going to come with a lot of pressure. That's going to come with a lot of people looking to pick that apart. That is part of the game. That is fair play, man. So Evan Mobley, there's pressure on him going into the playoffs. Donovan trying to get out of the second round for the first time in his career. Kenny Atkinson trying to get out of the first round for the first time in his career as a coach. Jarrett Allen, I thought he really acquitted himself great against Orlando. Unfortunately, I think people were unfair when it came to that broken rib situation, but he has a chance to make a statement and help shift perception to where I think it should be all along. So there's big time pressure on this team, man. And when you have big time pressure and you answer the bell, that comes with a sense of relief as a fan. Like, that is one of the best feelings there is. So I think it is fair to both acknowledge that pressure and also just, the excitement that comes when you achieve and you match and exceed lofty expectations.
Oh yeah, brother. It's time. Let's go.
Let's do this. Next podcast will be after game one.
Before game one. Thank you very much.
Before game one for sure on YouTube. Next one up on the feed from an audio standpoint is probably going to be post game one. We will be on site in Cleveland. Very excited for that. Rocket Arena is going to be rocking. It's going to be hard for me to not say Romo Fijo, but I'm still getting used to that. But very, very excited to travel to Cleveland. We will have coverage for games 1 and game 2, as well as every game throughout the playoffs. We will be recording podcasts, whether we are in Cleveland or whether we are sitting here in these chairs. So very, very excited to break that down. Big thanks to everyone that tuned in live on YouTube. Make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, clicking that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cav.